I know that this episode came out right near the show's end, and the writing had kinda gone downhill a little bit by that point, but the writers really did Canadians dirty in this one.
I love Canada's national anthem. Too bad they don't play it much at the Olympics.
And your money has a girl on it.
Hey folks, welcome to Squirrel Tactics. Like, subscribe, check out the Patreon, let's do this. Uh-oh, Canada! The title is a play on the Canadian national anthem, Oh Canada. And to get this out of the way, I like Canada. They gave us Red Green, Gord Lightfoot, and Patrick Waugh. Bret Hart was my favorite wrestler. I've got family up there, so Canada, you're cool with me. Anywho, we start the episode at an outdoor furniture store, what's Irish and never goes inside, patio furniture, where Hank waxes poetic about his love for summer.
Summer. It's what America does best. Heck, we were born in the summer.
Which, yeah, that's crap. You want to know what summers are like in Texas? That's Texas in the summer. It's hot and dry, and if you happen to get some rain, it just makes it worse because now it's just hot and wet. So Hank and Peggy fall in love with a patio set, kinda odd considering they were supposed to be buying the Gatsby collection piece by piece, but yeah, whatever. And Hank makes the decision on the spot to go ahead and buy the whole shebang, which would probably run close to a couple of grand for the whole thing. Fancy patio furniture is expensive, but Hank doesn't care.
Well, I'm a guy who can sit on just about anything, but this furniture is god-dang lovely. Let's buy it. All of it.
What? Well, this is all happening so fast that...
Don't fight it.
Meanwhile, Boomhauer is checking out mosquito spray. That tends to come in handy, plus you gotta check the fragrance. But Bill and Dale come across something else in their search for new pots for Bill and a new hammock for Dale.
Is that what I think it is?
Santa Madre Dios.
It's beautiful.
Yep, it's a kegerator, and by golly, they gots to have it, so's they gets it. So with a new kegerator and new lawn furniture, Hank sees himself pretty much set for a great summer. Well, that is until he finds out that Boomhauer is spending the summer in Canada as part of a house swap.
This will no doubt be the best summer of our entire lives.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what, man, I'd love to just chill back and then get a dang old grill and chill, man, but I've got to head up to Canada this summer, man. Canada?
The guys aren't happy that Boomhauer is going to be gone, but they seem to be more focused on the fact that he's going to Canada and that there will be Canadians living in the neighborhood, which both seem kind of odd. I get that the writers were probably trying to play up the guy's xenophobia, but it's out of character for them to target Canadians and honestly not very Texan. Bill, however, has to be Bill and goes in another direction.
You're gonna be gone for an absurd amount of time. What if we all make new friends or get remarried? It could happen. Love is funny.
So Boomhauer is all set to head off for 3 months, and as they're saying their see you laters, Hank and Dale add a few more jabs at Canada, which again just seems out of character for them. And throughout this episode, I just got the feeling that the writer was going off of what they believed a Texan would act like, rather than what an actual Texan would act like. You know, it really wouldn't surprise me if he never even stepped foot in Texas. And considering he also wrote Square-Footed Monster, another later season episode where they tended to act out of character, I guess it makes sense. Also, there's a decently popular NHL team in Texas as well as multiple minor league teams, so as a hockey fan that lives in Texas, I can honestly say I have never dealt with anyone that has an issue with someone being a hockey fan.
Have fun. Hope you got your shots.
Boomhauer, don't you dare come back a hockey fan. Well, man, you know I gotta do what I'm dang on gotta do, man.
But, you know, at least Bill gets something right here.
Brothers don't shake hands. Brothers gotta hug.
Anywho, the Canadian family shows up and Dale immediately gets right to it, straight up booing them. Like, really? Come on now.
Hey, looks like the Canadians are here.
Boo!
Now be polite, Dale.
Hank gives them a little speech about how they should be welcoming to people no matter where they come from, and he's right. Plus, him putting some emphasis on California, yep, that one checks out.
It doesn't matter if they're from Canada, Laos, or God forbid, California.
The family get into Boomhauer's house and pretty quick see that they weren't expecting a bachelor pad, but they seem to just kind of go with it. And not long after, the Hills arrive to welcome them.
Peggy Hill, at your service.
Hank Hill, good to meet you.
Gordon Huskins, it's a pleasure. Oh, sorry. This is my wife Maureen and our son Ollie.
We're introduced to the Huskins. Gordon, by the way, was voiced by David Herman, and they seem like just normal everyday people. The two boys bond over interest in the metric system. Hank and Gordon share a love of lawnmowers, though they are different brands, and we'll come back to that later.
Ride high, ride strong, ride McCullum.
Now that's a slogan.
But we see the first sign of a possible issue when Peggy hands over their housewarming gift, which she refers to as a tour of America. Personally, I think this is odd because you'd think it would just be a basket of Texas things, and the one Texas thing in the basket is a bottle of barbecue sauce. And yeah, we already covered how Texas barbecue is all about the rub rather than the sauce in a previous video, so they would have given a dry rub instead of a sauce here. And if they were going to give any kind of sauce, it would have been Albert's hot sauce.
Here is Texas barbecue sauce, Washington apples, Vermont maple syrup.
Oh, that's so nice. But we always travel with our own pure maple syrup. It's like they say, you don't want to drink the water in every country, eh?
I really don't blame them for bringing their own maple syrup. That stuff is expensive and can be harder to find than you think, considering it's actual maple syrup and not the fake stuff we typically use down here. Peggy took it as a passive-aggressive poke, kind of like a backhanded compliment, and she mentions to Hank later that something was off about them, but Hank defends them in the most asinine way. I mean, come on, Hank, you're smarter than that.
Peggy, they're probably not used to dealing with neighbors. Canada is vast. They might go months without seeing another person.
This is quickly followed by possibly the most un-Hank thing I have ever heard Hank say in the entire run of the show.
Remember when that old widow couldn't take care of her yard anymore? Who forced her to move? I did.
Meanwhile, Boomhauer seems to be settling in just fine in Ontario, with his Baron von Applecrisp, of course, and he is introduced to his temporary neighbor, Suzette, who is apparently French-Canadian but doesn't live in Quebec, which is where most French-Canadians live. In fact, only about 4% of the people in Ontario are French-Canadian, and I'm going to go ahead and guess that this is several weeks into Boomhauer's stay, seeing as he started to get a little shaggy.
Hello, my name is Suzette. I live next door.
Yeah, man, I'm down bonjour, man.
Later on, we see the guys trying to figure out where to put the kegerator when Gordon drops by with a plate of brownies. You know, that's awfully nice of him, and Hank invites him to join them on a rewatch of Super Bowl 13, though the teams he mentions playing, the Cowboys and Broncos, played in Super Bowl 12, not Super Bowl 13. Gordon turns them down, but then he takes it a bit too far.
I mean, American football is a real snoozer, huh? Enjoy your nap, though, eh?
Now, if you prefer one version of football over another, that's cool, but there's no need to be a dick about it, and Gordon was kind of a dick about it. I get that they were trying to play on the whole Canadian stereotype of being, for lack of a better phrase, pleasant assholes, though personally I've never run across this myself. In my experience, most Canadians are like most Americans, just normal everyday people trying to live their lives. Dale is irritated by his remark, and especially the chuckle, but Hank makes peace as best he can.
He's okay, Dale. That must be how they trash talk in Canada, with little chuckles.
Hank distracts the guys by reminding them that they have a task to deal with, building a bar for the kegerator, which they accomplish and hold a party to break in the new furniture, complete with personalized mugs for all the guys, including Con and Lucky, though since Boomhauer is gone, Gordon gets to use his. Maureen, meanwhile, is passing out the passive-aggressive backhanded comments like they're candy.
Yeah, it's a lovely outdoor couch, but I'm starting to get a little rash. Probably all the petrochemicals in the synthetic fabric.
But Peggy isn't going to just keep her mouth shut, so she dishes it right back out, and I think we're supposed to see these two as rather alike. Same thing with Hank and Gordon. The Huskins are meant to be the Canadian version of the Hills, except yeah, they're not.
It might be that your skin isn't used to warm sunlight and friendship.
You might be right, because these bugs don't seem to hate it either.
Over at the bar, the guys are raising their frosty mugs for the first time. Dale not exactly happy with Gordon using Boomhauer's mug, but Hank insisted because Hank's trying to be a good neighbor. Then Bill and Dale start singing the Alamo beer song, which is okay, but Gordon is not a fan of the beer.
Well, I guess it's a fine beer. You know, if you're not into flavor, but you love going to the washroom all night.
Now, I get it. As I've stated before, I am not a Pilsner fan, so if someone handed me a Pilsner, it wouldn't be my first choice. But I would drink it and not complain. Gordon, on the other hand, takes a different route, and he bad talks Alamo. Again, his character is written to just be a crappy guy, and he notices that it might be time to leave.
Oh, sorry. Maureen's given me our secret signal to leave.
Now, the sensible thing to do here is to either finish the beer real quick and leave the mug on the bar, or you just don't finish the beer and you leave the mug on the bar. The worst thing to do is to not finish the beer and then just leave the mug in a potted plant, which is exactly what Gordon does, and I'm willing to bet that that would be seen as pretty rude in Canada. I do find it funny that Con is more angry at the situation than Hank, who is trying to come up with some kind of explanation, thinking that maybe it's just a cultural misunderstanding.
If you ask me, I think America's building a wall on the wrong border.
This gets interrupted when a police officer shows up because they had received a noise complaint. And it's pretty clear where the complaint came from considering everyone else is at the party except the Gordons. Then for some reason the cop is way overly aggressive. It's like they just decided to write everyone as an asshole in this episode. And Hank ends up getting a warning.
Did you ever stop to think that maybe there's a bigger world out there than what's happening right here?
The next day, Hank goes over to have a discussion about what went down, and the Huskins are pretty much nonchalant about it, more or less acting like everybody had just had fun the night before and nothing negative at all had gone down, even going so far as to blaming them calling the cops on a difference in customs, which, yeah, that's a crap excuse.
You know, in America, it's okay to call or just knock on your neighbor's door if there's a problem. You don't need to call the cops.
Oh, sorry about that. We're not familiar with your local customs.
Gordon then doubles down and starts going on about the superiority of Canadian lawnmowers, even going so far as to insult Hank's lawn, which, yeah, them there's damn near fighting words for Hank. And the two also disagree over who's gonna mow Boomhauer's lawn, with Gordon wanting to test drive a McCullum from the local dealership to give Boomhauer's lawn a real cutting.
Quiet as a casket, and it won't damage your grass blades. That's what's making your lawn look so brown.
You talking about my grass blades, Canada?
Boomhauer, by the way, is still up in what's supposed to be Ontario, going with the flow and having a much better time than his counterparts down south. The guys are sitting around drinking and complaining about the Huskins. This is where we find out that Con survived the killing fields, by the way.
I dodged bullets in the killing fields for 2 extra years instead of going to Canada.
Peggy then gets a phone call from Gordon asking them to turn the music down, you know, doing what Hank had asked them to do. But rather than see this as a step in the right direction, Hank decides to go full on not Hank and be a bad neighbor by turning the music up and making as much noise as possible.
If I want to get rid of those Canadians, I'm going to have to do something I've never done before. Be a bad neighbor.
So yeah, this is extremely un-Hank, especially because what he's doing violates the block charter. And if you know anything about Hank, you know that he holds the block charter right below the Constitution when it comes to documents you follow. But, you know, at least he admits that it's out of character. Oh, and this happens, which I totally forgot about. They keep drinking and partying into the night to the extent that Peggy wants to quit, but Hank won't hear of it, and he insists that they keep going for patriotic reasons.
Oh, can we please stop this? I can actually feel my liver through my shirt.
We can't let up. This is for America.
Gordon finally has enough and shows up to the party with his own beer and challenges Hank to a drinking contest. And of course, as the custom, while they drink, both sides have to talk smack back and forth.
Why can't America make a decent ale?
Probably because we're too busy making medical breakthroughs and blockbuster movies and going to the moon.
When Gordon tries to brag about Canadian accomplishments, he doesn't do a particularly good job considering everything he says is incorrect.
Yeah? Well, we invented zippers, penicillin, and the Zamboni.
So, zippers and Zambonis were both invented in the United States, and penicillin was discovered in England, though insulin was actually discovered in Canada, so they've got that one going for them. We then get a line that I laughed way too hard at, and I've got to tip my hat because it's a good, simple joke.
You Americans, you're so gosh darn ignorant and self-centered. Tell me who our Prime Minister is.
Why?
By the way, before anyone asks, yes, I know the Canadian Prime Minister is Justin Trudeau. No, I did not have to look it up. Anywho, things finally boiled over when lawnmowers get brought up and it becomes all about Mason versus McCullum, the United States versus Canada, the bald eagle versus a maple leaf. Gordon starts to mow Boomhauer's lawn, but Hank drives him off with his own mower, only for Gordon to start mowing Hank's lawn. And this whole rigmarole culminates in a game of chicken with everyone looking on.
Oh, God.
Included in that everyone is the cops, who quickly arrest Hank and Gordon for driving while intoxicated. Which, yeah, they were, considering they were operating a motor vehicle while legally drunk in the alley, which would be considered a thoroughfare. I should probably add that Gordon's blood alcohol level was slightly higher than Hank's.
.085. That's a DWI for YOU.
.09. Huh. You win, Canada.
So they both get booked for DWI, with Hank calling Buck to come bail him out. And yeah, I love Buck's reaction here to Hank getting his first DWI. I mean, God only knows how many times the shoe has been on the other foot, and Hank has had to be the one bailing out a drunk Buck.
Son, welcome to the club. Come on now, give me a hug.
Thanks, Mr. Strickland.
He introduces Hank to his high-priced lawyer, and as they're leaving, Gordon asks Hank for his help in getting out. You know, seeing as he's a foreign national in an American jail. But Hank goes way off character and refuses.
Hank, you gotta help me.
Oh, you mean bail you out of trouble? How terribly American that would be of me. Eh?
I find it very hard to believe that Hank would just have turned his back on Gordon and left him in that cell. Maybe Hank was still drunk, but that's not Hank. Hank's better than that. Boomhauer, meanwhile, is still doing pretty great up in Canada. He's also apparently learned to speak French Canadian.
Vous ne pouvez me partir, mon cher.
Chérie, non nous est pas. Nous avons encore cette nuit.
Faire l'amour à moi.
Buck's lawyer gets Hank taken care of, with the DWI going on his record, but no jail time, and he gets to keep his license, but there are a few other conditions as well.
But I have to go talk to some high school kids about drinking and driving, and look at some dead bodies at the morgue, and stay off my lawnmower for 6 months.
They find out that Gordon isn't doing too well in jail, and that they've had to move him due to death threats. And just to add insult to injury, Boomhauer gets back with Suzette in tow, meaning that it's time for the Huskins to move out and go home. Oh, and this is actually the first time we hear Boomhauer's first name.
Boomhauer!
There he is.
Oh, hey there.
Hello, Jeff. Oh my, it's the 15th already? Would you mind if we stayed a little longer?
Boomhauer wants his house back, and since Gordon's in jail, they can't just go back to Canada, so they don't really have anywhere else to stay, and it's actually Peggy that steps up and does the right thing here. Way to go, Peggy. Inviting the Huskins to stay with them until everything gets sorted out.
Give me you're tired, you're poor, you're huddled masses, etc. Maureen, Ollie, you can stay with us. What are neighbors for?
The Huskins choose to sleep outside, not wanting to be any more of a bother than they have to be, and there's a moment between Maureen and Peggy where we see that it looks like things are okay between the two. And Maureen actually shows some remorse for her earlier negative comments.
Are you sure you don't want to stay inside?
Oh, absolutely not. We don't want to be any more of an imposition than we already are.
What about the chemicals?
I may have imagined those chemicals.
I imagine you're right.
Bill, Dale, and Hank discuss the situation, and Hank finally decides that he needs to do something because it's the right thing to do. Which, again, he should have already done that, but whatever, it's late season Hank.
You know, Canadians might be sanctimonious and bland, but America has been protecting Canada ever since England stopped. Fellas, we've got a neighbor in trouble, and it's time we did something about it.
So the guys go to see Buck's lawyer, who agrees to help Gordon in exchange for the kegerator, showing that the guys were willing to sacrifice something that meant a hell of a lot to them in order to help someone they didn't like very much. Which, again, was the right thing to do.
Goodbye, old friend.
You treat her right, Womack. Keep her lines clean, you hear?
Gordon gets out of jail, and though he acknowledges the sacrifice that the guys made to help him, he never actually says thank you, nor apologizes for anything, which is just crappy and leaves a bad taste in everybody's mouths. And even when the Huskins are driving away, heading back to Canada, he's still kind of a dick.
See you guys. If you're ever up in Canada to get reasonably priced pharmaceuticals or, you know, a breath of fresh air, look us up. Keep your stick on the ice.
Bill and Dale aren't happy with Gordon, and by proxy Canada, for causing them to lose their kegerator, and not even being good enough to say thanks, but Hank explains that they did the right thing anyway, and oftentimes doing the right thing is thankless.
So ungrateful. Didn't even say thank you for getting him out of jail.
Or for giving up our kegerator, which had replaced trash day as my favorite thing about this neighborhood.
No, he didn't, but you know what? We were good neighbors and we did the right thing. That's what matters.
And that's the end of the episode, which, yeah, as y'all can tell, I am not a fan of this one. The writing was way too over the top. A lot of things don't make sense, like where did the Hills get the money to buy an entire patio furniture set and at least part, if not all, of a kegerator? Hank is totally out of character, starting the episode as a voice of reason before going off the rails, then becoming the voice of reason again. It's like Boomerang Hank. The other guys had a few good lines, but were mostly just background figures that, for the most part, could have been interchangeable. This episode, to me, was a perfect example of what was wrong with the show in its later seasons. When the writing switched to being more about political humor, which is what Mike Judge wanted, rather than character-based humor, which was actually pushed by Greg Daniels. I wasn't a fan of this episode before, and after watching it countless times in order to make this, it only reminded me of why I don't like it, and I ended up not liking it even more. And I really hate to keep harping on this, but where did the Canadian hate come from? I guarantee you if a Texan was going to talk smack about one of America's neighbors, it'd be Mexico. Had the Huskins been from California, yeah, I could see the level of dislike being realistic. However, the writers went overboard with not just the Canadian hate, but also making the Canadian characters as unlikable as possible. There's even a little thing snuck in there where it's alluded to that Suzette is cheating on her boyfriend with Boomhauer while her boyfriend is off working in a mine. So, all in all, it seems like the writer doesn't know anything about Canadians or Texans, and it's possible that I did more research for this video than he did for this episode. You got treated wrong here, Canada. You have my sympathy. Maybe that'll help make the fact that y'all haven't won a Stanley Cup in 30 years feel a little better. Thanks for watching, folks. Keep your sticks on the ice.
It's hard to enjoy a cold beer while others in the world don't have a roof over their heads.
Hard, yes. Impossible? No.
Now that we're here, it's time for a beer.
What could be more apropos? Alamo, Alamo, my one true amigo.